Yes. Hello, everyone, and this is our next community call and Ask Me Anything session. Today we started a bit late because the link that we had with this was having technical problems for some reason. Totally on me. We learned a lesson today, and we are starting. And I just want to know about the updates that you have all over the proof of humanity and proof of uniqueness space. I know Adam has had a recent presentation in a kind of a workshop that they had for identity. Adam, do you want to tell us what happened there and what were the reactions there?
Yeah, so no, I got some really good feedback and questions from Brian Ford, which is good. If you guys don't know who Brian Ford is, he he's kind of like one of the really old school people who have researched the problem of unique identity, like way before most of us even gave any thought to the problem at all, or even knew it was a problem. He was already
or
doing.
were born.
So, anyways, his thing was his main contribution was pseudonym parties, which is a way like to get people, a bunch of people together at the same time. And because humans can only be in one place at one time, that's a way to solve this problem. So he's written some papers on that. He wrote a paper, I think last year, or maybe it was this year, where he critiqued, he gave some updates to his pseudonym parties idea, and then critiqued all the other existing solutions, including BrightID. So it's a really interesting read. Anyways, I gave the presentation, and he thought it was really interesting, and asked some good questions afterwards. So I know we've kind of alluded to Aura in the past. So I guess we can talk about it. I think this would probably be an okay time. The presentation is about 8 minutes. Would everybody be okay if I just gave the presentation again? Does it, any thumbs up? Okay, we've got some thumbs up, because I think I can do a better job this time now that I've rehearsed it one more time. Well, I guess it was a live rehearsal. I guess it was the real thing, but
Yeah, and the only thing I would say is go faster through the beginning and spend
yeah,
more time in the end.
oh yeah. I looked at that, and I thought, yeah, I should have rehearsed it a few more times to get the timing down. But yeah, I spent way too much time at the beginning and then rushed through the end. And the end stuff is the most important stuff. So.
Right, and we are a fairly selected audience here, as we were before. So like we understand the problem, so we don't need it outlined as much.
Exactly. Yeah.
The end stuff is new. It's interesting. It's different.
Yeah, that's some really good feedback. So okay, let me find my slides. Okay, I think I'm in the right place. Okay. Let me present. Okay. And now let me switch back to Zoom and present here. Okay, share screen. Host disabled, participant screen sharing.
You shouldn't be able to do that because.
Hi, Slar.
And now you can share.
Okay, thanks. Okay. All right, here we go. Everybody can see me, hear me? Yes?
Perfectly fine.
Good. All right, great. Okay, so with BrightID, our goal is to build a decentralized proof of unique human solution. And with BrightID, for those of us that have used it, we know that we use a social graph. So the point of this presentation is to ask two key questions. Why would we use a social graph? And what does a connection mean in the social graph? And so here you can see that we've got little trust going back and forth between the connections. But what does a connection really mean? So as I'm going through the presentation, think about these two questions. Why use a social graph? What does a connection mean? So the reason to use a social graph is because it's some sort of representation of trust, and there must be trust for any of these unique person solutions to work. There has to be trust somewhere, we think. For the proof of attendance, if you ask Idina, They might tell you, oh no, there doesn't have to be any trust. It's just a smart contract. It's like that all the world tunes into at the same time. So maybe you don't need trust. But if you want to do something like biometrics, birth registration, create a registry of human, you need some trust somewhere in there. Like, who's going to do that? Like, who gets to do it? Who gets to record things? Who gets to vouch for things? There's got to be some notion of trust. Decentralizing trust leads to better outcomes. The difference here is, do you want one actor in charge? Do you want to wake up one day and find that the government of Colombia has said, okay, you must go through us to get your unique verification to do anything, whether it's traveling or getting benefits or using apps? Like, you have to come get your ID card from us, and we don't really know you, so we're going to collect data. And or do you want something that's more decentralized, where it's people you already know verifying you, and it's not just one trusted body? If there's one trusted body that's maybe corrupt or having issues, other trusted bodies can take its place. They can people can say why this one should be trusted more than this one, and you have options. So that's good. Ideally, you'll be verified by someone you already know. And, that's nice, because I don't have to show my wife an ID card. She knows who I am. But if I'm getting verified by someone who I've never met before, then there does have to be something. So that's not ideal. So ideally, you want to get verified by someone you already know, because it's scary to share info with anyone else. And even though we do all this privacy first stuff, and we're very careful to only share things peer-to-peer in BrightID, I have noticed that some people have like this kind of squeamish reaction when they show up to a connection party, and they're like, I don't know anyone here, and they want me to turn on my video and say my name. Like, this is weird. I don't like this. And that is a normal reaction. Like, you should not, you shouldn't have to share anything with someone you don't already know for this to work. So that's our goal with BrightID. The state of BrightID is we can help with small giveaways, something like rare coin. Maybe you get $5 worth of the coin. Learn to earn, we use Rabbit Hole. And I think we've talked about it before in this call, but both of those, they had major problems before Rabbit Hole has always used BrightID, but the one time that they forgot to turn it on, they had some major bot problems. Rarecoin, before they used BrightID, it was unusable because of the bots, and then they used BrightID, and now they can give out their coin. With ClearFund, we have to realize that BrightID does have a limitation. It doesn't stop the vote buying problem. So we've seen some Gitcoin, like requests for Gitcoin grants that will say they'll drop little hints in there like, hey, we're about to launch a token, and you might get some of our token if you pitch in a little bit to this grant. So they entice people, and it's kind of like almost like buying their vote. So BrightID does not, there's other things that need to be done to help with that, and BrightID doesn't help with the vote buying. So we ask, well, where, like, can we do better? Can we support more than what we're already supporting? Wouldn't it be lovely if BrightID was the basis for being able to verify someone for a $10,000 UBI? I mean, who would like that? I would like that. That'd be great. And we want to do it better than a government can do. We talked about centralized versus decentralized. We think we can do it better than a government can do. Imagine a UBI that comes from a bunch of different sources, like a bunch of different companies, a bunch of different blockchains, whatever sources paying into this UBI. It doesn't just have to be the government doing it. So BrightID's technology is based on Sybil Rank. There's a 2012 paper. It comes from PageRank. which is by Google, and it's proven to improve civil detection in social networks. But it has a limitation because when you look at a social network, what does a connection mean? If you look at Twitter, what does that mean? When you're trying to prove whether someone's a unique person, not creating civil accounts, you want the connection to have some sort of approximation for vouching for someone's honesty. Is this an honest user? But that's not, I promise you, that is not what a Twitter connection means. Like if I follow someone and they follow me back, that doesn't mean that I think that they're honest or that I think there is one person or anything like that. Facebook's a little better, but it's still, these connection requests pile up in my Facebook inbox, and sometimes I let people in without being very careful. BrightID tries to be better than that, but it's still not perfect because I don't think what we've realized is that in BrightID, it's people can tell us very accurately how well they know someone. Are they just met? Do they already know them? But they're not really going into the detail that you need to go into to know whether that person is honest. Just because I know someone doesn't mean that I know that they're honest, that they didn't create a civil. But this information is useful, and we'll see why it's useful, but it is useful for the people who are researching the honesty, to know how well people say that they know each other. So we're still going to continue to do this. But we have this new thing that we've talked about before called Aura, which is a way for people who want to go beyond what BrightID does. So most of the people who come in for BrightID, they have something they want to do. They want to use this other app. They just want to get verified. Tell me the steps that I need to do so that I can get verified. That's how most people want to use BrightID, and that's fine. But for the people who want to go beyond and go deeper into BrightID, we want to have this other system called Aura, where you can earn more, you can do more, you can help more, and by being a good helper and doing this honesty research, you can earn rewards and try to become the best BrightID helper that you can. And in this call, we have a bunch of BrightID stars. I think BrightID stars are going to be naturally really good at this Aura game. Right now, Aura is in closed beta. And so not everyone can do it right now. It's really it's really limited to who can use it now. But even when it's open and anyone can use it, like I said, not everyone's gonna want to do it, or not everyone's going to be good at it. But if you can do the honesty research into the people that you've connected with, make sure that they're not creating civils. If you can do the helper research, so you're watching the other helpers, you're making sure that the other helpers are doing a good job of playing the game. If you see someone who's playing the Aura game and doing a really sloppy job and not being careful, you can rate them down. If you see someone who's doing a great job, you can rate them up. So like I would rate our BrightID stars as really good helpers. I would rate a bunch of people that I know as honest if I do the research. So if I look into them and I say, okay, well, I think, like, just to give a really easy example, let's look at my wife. So I know that she should be connected to my parents. I know that she should be connected to her parents. So I have all these connections in my connection list that I know should be connected to her. So if I look that up and I see, with the help of Aura, if Aura tells me, yes, all those people that you think should be connected to her really are connected to her, that's a really good sign. If they're not, that could be a sign that maybe she took a Sybil account or like a duplicate account and connected to those other people, and that's why they're not showing up. So it could be a warning
Adam,
sign.
just want to jump in for a second. We've got one BrightID star that we know is doing things wrong. They may not be meaning to, but they're incorrectly making over 1,000 already known connections to people they don't actually know. There's a great example of how in the game we could all now mark they're not accurate.
Yeah, so they're a bad helper, and then we could also do the research, like, and make a determination. Do we think that they just don't get the rules of the game, or are they actively being dishonest? But definitely they would get docked a whole bunch of points on the helper side for doing that. So yeah, let's move on. So yeah, this is going to be the battleground in the fight against Sybils. So we're going to have the very best Sybil helpers working in Aura, and they are going to be directly head-to-head battling with the Sybils, which is exactly how we want it. Because if just regular users who are just using BrightID for themselves to get verified are forced to go head-to-head against the Sybils, I feel like that's a losing game. That the Sybils are clever. They figure out ways. I mean, you see it on Facebook all the time. They figure out clever ways to get people to connect to them when they shouldn't connect to them, things like that. But if you have people that view Aura as their job and they're working really hard to keep the Sybils out, that's a winning battle. Let's go on to the next one. Oh yeah, the helper graph. So what happens is, we talked about honesty, correctness. The helper graph kind of looks like this. So you've got your helpers, which are the people who are playing the Aura game. They're rating each other on how helpful and accurate they are. And then all the helpers are rating each other and just regular users on their honesty. So they do that type of honesty research that I was talking about. And so you as just a regular user, your job before it was go to a connection party, get a low-level verification. You can get maybe $5 worth of something. For the new, better one, all you have to do is find a helper. The helper will take care of everything. You find a helper that you already know. So that's the key difference. And you get a high-level verification because they do the research. And it's nothing to be afraid of because, like we said before, this is someone you already know. You don't have to share a whole bunch of information with them that they didn't already know about you.
What if you don't know any helpers?
Yes, so this is a really important question. So one of the things we want to do is we want to focus on building real communities, like real life communities, where if you don't already know a helper, someone in your community or your group of friends or something like that will become a helper. So basically, let's say that I'm using BrightID, and maybe where I'm at, there's just the people that I know well, we don't know any helpers. Well, one of us could become a helper. So the idea is that the entire world can be connected with just 4 hops. So if I want to, let's say no one I know is a helper, and so I say, okay, I'm going to take up the charge. I'm going to do it myself. I'm going to become the helper, and I'm going to be the person that benefits my community, my friends and family. That's good. Not everybody in my friends and family has to do it. Maybe it's just me that does it. So I go, I get involved. I meet people. Other helpers get to know me. They evaluate my honesty. I get to know other helpers. So I become part of this Aura game, and I become part of the Aura community. And that's the way that it should work. So for the future, for most people, hopefully there will be enough communities and enough people doing this that you should be able to easily find someone. It could be a relative, it could be a friend. You'll know somebody who's doing this. Not everybody will be doing it, but you'll know somebody somewhere that knows you well, that will be playing the Aura game. And yeah, I think the challenge for BrightID is going to be building up to that stage, because we're not. We got to start somewhere, and so we've got to go from a small number of helpers to a large number of helpers. We got to figure out how to build that up. Even if it's still 0.1% of users are the helpers, we still got to get there. We still got to get, when you're talking about the entire population of the world, 0.1% is still a huge number. So we've got to find a way to build up to that many helpers. So, I hope that everyone here on this call kind of feels like, okay, cool. This is something that I think that I would want to do, because we just need, like I said, a few people to feel like that they want to engage in this way, and become helpers and go out of their way to help their friends and family get verified with BrightID, and then it works. So yeah, that's the presentation. Does anyone have any questions on what they saw? Nope.
Not a question, but I share the same concern as Philip of how to grow the BrightID stars group that we have, changing into the helpers or people who have the I don't know a high amount of the brightness, so to speak.
Yeah.
Well, so Pascal, I'll point out that there's now at least tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people playing Axie Infinity to earn money, because they can earn a few dollars an hour doing that task. We wouldn't need nearly that many people to do this, to have massive reach. There's today 10 million people playing around in crypto. More people own the assets on like an exchange, but they're not actually playing around crypto. But like people that make the next step, say it's 10 million. Now, how many helpers do you need to service 10 million? And then if you get to that scale, you've probably gotten to escape velocity, and then it's not so hard to find more.
I'm imagining people who would be earning a little bit of money for presenting themselves all over as helpers. Like, here, I'm a helper. I'm willing to help people get a meaningful connection on BrightID, and all it takes is like $1. And I would like spend time with you and make a connection to you. At the same time, there are problems and procedures that we need to tackle. But at the same time, I think, yeah, if people are earning money by becoming helpers, but in a meaningful way, that's what we are after.
And we have not figured out the economic structure yet, but it will need to be such that, like, when you're a helper and you bring people in, you can earn, but you're also putting value at risk. You have to, in some way, like, stake on the person, such that if the system agrees that that person's valid and should be verified, great, you'll have gotten paid for what you did. But if you don't convince the system, if you and that person if the system does not come to the conclusion in some reasonable amount of time that is a valid new user, you will not get paid. Instead, you will have lost money doing that task.
Yeah, I think the simplest way to look at it economically is that BrightDAO will have a budget to pay out to the best helpers. And so as long as, let's say, the sponsorship model is thriving, or whatever income is coming into BrightID, that there's enough of that can be allocated to pay the helpers, I think that it works out economically. And so I mean, we'll see how much it takes to pay them what they need to be paid. And we can, that can go into the economics of how much a sponsorship for a regular person should be. I think that those two will kind of go hand in hand. But as far as what you said about how is this going to change from the existing stars? So if you go and you look right now at the BrightID Meet page, and that a person looks at to see where they're going to go to get verified, right now it shows times and languages. So it says, like, pick a time, pick a language, and this is where you go and you get verified. So that's going to switch from being time and language based to being geography and interest based. So I think we can still have like a registry, and I think this would be really convenient for people to have a place where they can go and look and see where they should go to get get verified, but it's going to be that you have to join an actual community. So you may find out something like, wow, like, okay, there's, you know, just down the street from me, there's like this I don't know, maybe like community group, could be like let's say it's like I don't know, I like chess, so let's say it's a chess club. Let's say there's a chess club down the street from me, and I find out, okay, well, they actually have some people in there that are BrightID helpers. That's cool. So I would be able to see that. I would be able to search by location and see some ones that are near me. And I could also search by interest. So like I said, again, I could search by chess. So maybe there's an online chess club and people get to know each other on there. And so maybe I go to that and I realize, oh, look, I already know 5 of these people. This is great. And you know, there's some BrightID helpers there. So this is the type of thing, like in interest-based and geography-based, you find a community where you're gonna actually know some people, so that they can do some research. Because if I don't know anyone at all, it's not really, it's either gonna be an invasion of privacy or it's just not gonna work if I try to do honesty research on someone I don't know. So that's not what we want. We want you to have a helper that you already know.
Uh, this question might kind of feel irrelevant, but is there any way to produce a QR code or any type of connection making tool that is only the possible in person?
No, not. I mean, if anyone here has an idea, they can. I say no because like location spoofing is a real thing.
Yeah, I don't think that you could create a good technical way of doing it, but I do think you could create a squishy way of doing it, right? You could say, is this a live in person connection? And it wraps up to the honesty question we already answered. You know, if we've got someone rated as super honest, you know, if Adam inputs in his app that, hey, I connected to Jane in person, the fact that it's Adam saying it and I've got him rated at the most trustworthy end of the scale, I simply believe it because he said it. And that you can't spoof that without disrupting the entire trust chain.
Yeah. So Victor asked an interesting question. He says a helper must be a public figure. I think that anyone can try to become a helper. I don't think you have to be a public figure. I think you become a public helper, not necessarily a public figure. You become a public helper where you're, but really you help the people that you know. It's not like you set up a shop somewhere. Okay, so imagine a public notary. A public notary is slightly different. Like a public notary, they could actually set up a shop and say, yeah, I'm going to notarize anything. I don't even have to know who you are. Like just come in, I'll check out your documents and I'll sign something for you. So that's different than this. With BrightID, it's more like you actually get to know people. So I think there is some like getting to know people better. For instance, let's say that I know that there's some people let's say I'm a BrightID helper, which I am, and I know that there's some people in my neighborhood who aren't BrightID verified that I think that they could benefit from that. Then I might like go out of my way to talk to those people and you know, introduce them to BrightID. So there is definitely some room for being outgoing and kind of making yourself a little better known among your friends and neighbors and stuff like that. But you don't have to do that, and you don't. I mean, you can just stick with the people you already know well and that you're already interacting with on a frequent basis. You can. So like, there's different levels. There's different levels to like how big you want to make it for yourself. And obviously there's some people who know a lot more people than others. But I think anyone, no matter how many people you know, can be an effective BrightID helper if they just learn the right way to do it. Yeah.
How much do we, all of us together, feel and are sure that the verified people on Twitter, on Instagram, is there a verification
Oh,
level
you mean
on
the little
Facebook
check
as well?
mark?
The check mark guys. Uh, to what extent are we sure that these are unique humans?
Not at all. I mean,
Not.
some of them
Mm.
are entities. They're certainly not humans.
And I get like I guarantee that there's someone out there that's got 2 verified personal accounts because they put out enough interesting content. They have enough people that follow them and care about them that it is not Twitter is not trying to solve one account per person. They're trying to solve, is this really the account that people are expecting it to be? So I think it's a pretty good civil prevention, but that's distinctly not the answer they're trying to do. If I run 2 awesome anonymous accounts, Twitter's happy to verify both of them because they both deserve it for different reasons.
And they don't know if that's the same person or not. They're not taking that record.
Twitter's probably got pretty darn good tools to do that job. They're quite stingy with those blue check marks. But again, they're not explicitly trying to do that. Also, they're certainly not saying anything whatsoever about the honesty or integrity of that person. The fact they have a blue check mark does not mean that we should trust their opinions on anything else.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not a decentralized. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, of course. What Victor suggested made me think that okay, maybe helpers can start with like blue checkmark havers, being encouraged to be helpers, and then can we have a blue checkmark for helpers on BrightID that reach out to these people that have these blue check marks on BrightID. They are verified, but also have this check mark telling you that this person can be a helper, and then flourish these check marks to others.
Yeah, so Philip had a really good idea. He's actually the one who started the idea for the Aura game. And he had a really good idea on how to decentralize the trust generation mechanism, which is that that anyone can basically create their own. So right now we call them seeds, but let's say in Aura we call them, what are we calling them? Teams or something? Let's call them teams. Okay, so you can create your own team of helpers, and you can. So for the first one, let's say, so this is what I would think would be a great starting point for a first team would be take the people who have already proven that they've done a good job of bringing people into BrightID. So existing stars and founders and people like that, bring them in as the initial team. Then, and so now they start out as kind of like the seeds. They have the initial helper power, that then gets spread out to other helpers. So if one of those initial helpers thinks that you're a good helper, then you also get some of their helper power, and then you're able to verify other honest users, and that's kind of how it begins. But if another group wants to start from scratch, rather than getting those helpers to recognize them as good helpers, if they want to appeal to the broad BrightID community and the public at large, that they have some intrinsic quality that makes them really good helpers without needing to be vouched for by the existing BrightID helpers, they can start their own team. They can say, okay, we are Team Alpha, and Team Alpha, the reason why we're good helpers is, look, we ran this other social network, or whatever the reason may be, or we are like the top checkmark people on Twitter or something, whatever the reason may be why they think that they should be a good group of helpers. They can start their own group. And this is very healthy, actually, because that way, let's say the group of the first team, let's say Team 1, let's call them Team Alpha and Team Bravo. Let's say Team Alpha becomes corrupt or something, or people stop trusting, or people like, okay, Team Alpha is probably making Sybils, we don't trust them anymore. You've got like Team Bravo, Team Charlie, Team Delta, you've got these other teams that are already operating, and you can easily transition to just using their trust scores rather than Team Alpha.
And all of the data that all the connections that people made, all the ratings that everybody made, all of that is there. So you're just picking different trust seeds to analyze the graph. The graph is fixed. You don't lose anything that happened. You're just resetting the trust, or you're saying, hey, I'm going to listen to Bravo and Charlie and Delta and no longer Alpha. Like, that's just how I'm going to run my algorithms. But all the work that everybody did is totally reusable. You're just rejiggering how you bring trust into the system. And then you realize that, oh, Delta is no good, but Epsilon is good. Great. Again, you don't have to redo anything. And part of the sort of what I imagine is like a funding model for part of this is that you would charge, there's a protocol fee of some kind to create one of these groups.
Yep.
If you go on to do it well, if your group is successful and gets used in a bunch of algorithms, you'll be able to be rewarded for that. And if your group does not go on to be important, or worse, your group goes on to be thought of as detrimental to the system, you would have lost the money that you put in.
Yeah, and then you take like a broad community like BrightDAO that can, has a lot of different humans in it, a lot of different unique humans in it, a lot of different BrightID users in it. They can make the decision about which of these different teams should be rewarded. So they could say, like, Team Alpha is garbage, that we're not gonna pay them anything, like no budget goes to them. But they could say these other teams are doing an awesome job, so they, we're going to put in a vote to pay people who have helpers who have good scores from these other teams are going to get paid. So that's that's how the community comes back and like reinforces which ones they feel are, like, humanity reinforces which answers they feel are the most honest.
So I guess my question is, so that it seems like the Aura project will allow a more granular kind of trust verification. I hate using the word level, but I think it's like the best kind of thing that we got, like surety of trust in particular users of the network. So like, what are your thoughts are, like, when I think of these kinds of systems, I think of the Black Mirror episode, if you're familiar with that show, Nosedive, season 3, episode 1, one of my favorite episodes of like the social credit system, where you're basically rating people on all of your interactions. And like, what are the thoughts around like potential misuse of this, and like downvoting people and like ruining their trustworthiness within the network?
That's exactly why it needs to be decentralized, because if there's a problem like that, where we can show, hey, look, like, people for the wrong reasons are getting like voted down, like maybe because they're unpopular or something, or they said something on social media, and so people are getting voted down and they're not humans anymore because of whatever reason, and it's not working. Then, like, you could imagine if it's like a government, it takes a long time to change a government and to fix something like that if it's run by a government. But if it's run by a decentralized process with a bunch of different like competing teams, then if you say like, okay, this team is like being abusive, they're just, they're rating people down for no reason, it hurts the trust of the entire team. And so like that team is now downgraded, and these other teams kind of like take over the void that team leaves behind. So I think hopefully humanity will just like keep a check on these teams and call out abuses and things like that are happening.
Sure. And another thing I'll put in. So one of the first questions in Aura, which in many ways isn't that important, and in some ways is super important, is the question is, are they human? So let's say I do get really mad at you. If I can degrade your honesty score, I can degrade your accuracy score, but I shouldn't degrade your human score because that would actually make me not honest, right? So because in fact you are a human, so I should get docked by saying you're not human if indeed you are human. If you're a bot, I should absolutely say you're not human. But that's just one way in the system. So a bad actor that's getting ostracized in this system may be in a position that they can't help anyone else get verified. Like they're stuck. They're a dead end. But they're not excluded from the network. They're simply, yep, you exist, and we don't care anything about what you have to say. We acknowledge your existence, and that's it.
Right.
So you can't be a participant in the game, but you can be verified on BrightID.
Yeah, so it's going to be much harder to be a helper and get rewarded as a helper, and to keep that really high level of trust that it takes to be a helper. But just if you're just going to collect your UBI and you're going to be verified as honest, that's a basic level that if you're a human and you're not creating civil accounts, you should never get that taken away from you.
Okay. So yeah, I guess a couple of things that I take away from that are, one, that we're separating out your proof of humanness from your proof of trustworthiness. And then I guess the second piece is that when we talk about choosing to exclude like a particular team's voice, like Team Alpha in this case, like they're a bad group of people, we're talking on a protocol to protocol basis, or an app to app basis, where the app gets to choose which groups they trust. So
app basis, not protocol. Protocol doesn't care. It's happy to listen to any of the teams, but any given application or any given node gets to make the choice of how it wants to formulate its analysis, but the protocol treats them all the same.
Okay, cool.
And excellent questions and concerns. And we regularly bring up that Black Mirror episode of like, let's make sure we don't do that. Mm-hmm. It also important to note that, so like when I envision something like Aura is going to have a lot of information. I don't think that all of the granular information that Aura gets should necessarily be entirely public. Like the BrightID social graph, you can look at every bit of information that BrightID has stored about that connection. In something like Aura, I don't think it's going to be that way. I think that like you have access to your part of the information. You don't have access to everybody's information. And what gets output to the system is an answer, but not all the information that went into concluding that answer.
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely agree with that, because like when I'm talking about honesty research, and that I'm researching a user's honesty because I know that user, that's the only way I can do that. That should not transfer over to someone else. Like I'm not going to share all the details that went into that with someone else. That's not appropriate. Like that could easily become an invasion of privacy. So yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Okay, we are about 5 minutes past hour. If there is any questions, or if there is anything anyone wants to bring up before we call it an hour, let me know. Okay, I think we're good. And once again, sorry for the technical problems in my head that resulted in us starting the meeting in 20 minutes. And I want to mention that the link is fixed now, so we're going to be fine with the same link for the future weeks. And thank you everyone for being here. Thank you, Adam, for the presentation. Now we have it on our own YouTube channel pretty soon, so we can link to it. And yeah, thank you everyone. And I'm gonna stop recording now.